All things die, and all things live forever. But our task is to die making roads over the sea. All things die, and all things live forever. But our task is to die making roads over the sea. A poem by the Spanish poet Antonio Machado, translated by the poet Robert Bly. Welcome. I am Jay Leeming, and this is the Crane Bag Podcast. Where are we? Well, I'm coming to you from a smoky day, a day on which forest fires in Canada are sending their smoke drifting down into America, what we call America. I'm coming to you from a house. I'm recording this on the top floor of my house, looking out at that hazy world. I come to you from the earth, the air, the water, and the fire. I come to you from the north, south, east, and west. I praise and welcome these directions. I invite you to do the same. I praise the heights and the depths, the inner and the outer. We are in the middle of the Mahabharata, a great mythic, epic, sacred, historical story. We're in the middle of this story. We're in the middle of a war. And who wants to be in such a place as that? Well, none of us, really. We want to be home, soft, safe, happy, laughing. But we are in struggle. We are in battle. In our inner lives, in our outer lives. Though we want to live in peace and harmony, we find ourselves with the weapon in our hands, right? Whether it's a word or a thought. This is the part of the story which has the most fighting in it, I'm telling you that. But it is fighting which is, well, it's the working out of events that began long ago. The seeds of these events were planted early in the story. And right now, the battle is between the Pandavas and the Kurus. The Pandavas are the sons of Pandu the Pale, and there are 5 of them. They are Yudhishthira, the son of Dharma, Arjuna, the son of Indra, king of the gods, Bhima, the son of Vayu, the god of the wind, Bhima who is super strong, and the twins Nakula and Sahadeva, the twins with the shining eyes. And let us not forget Draupadi, the princess born out of a fire, their one wife, which is kind of wild, kind of strange, but, go back and listen to the story. There's a story there. And then on the other side, we have the Kurus, Kurus, Duryodhana and his brothers, Dushasana. He's got 100 brothers total. And on his side, there is also Bhisma and Drona. Bhisma, the grandfather of everyone, though he has no children. Bhisma, who this entire epic began with, and who taught the Pandavas, and also Drona, who was also their instructor. That is the story. And what's going to happen next? Do we know? Let's find out. Shall we begin? Let us begin. Gone on for 9 days. 9 days of suffering and of sorrow. 9 days of death on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And over this time, the forces of the Pandavas, their armies had been pummeled by the armies of Duryodhana and his brothers. Bhishma and Drona were merciless, calling forth Astras, attacking from all sides. And for the Pandavas, things were not going well. The war within, the war without. This is the war within, this is the war without. And on the 10th day they marched into battle once again. And the arrows flew thick and fast, and the horses whinnied and cried out, and elephants careened here and there, and men shouted and yelled, the armies lunging towards each other, death in the air, on the ground. And the ravens came to feed on the corpses of the soldiers. And Krishna drove the chariot of Arjuna straight for Bhisma. All day Bhisma there, dodging the arrows this way and that, calling forth astras. All day Arjuna attempting to kill Bhisma, to end this conflict. It was near the end of the day. The sun was approaching the horizon. And in this moment, Krishna threw down the reins. He jolted that chariot to a stop, and he leapt from the chariot. "This must end," he said. And Arjuna said, What? What are you doing?" "This must end. This entire battle is all the fault of this man and this insane vow he took back at the beginning of time. I will end this. Bhisma must die." And suddenly he reached out, and there was in his hand a razor-sharp disc as bright as the sun. Its light spread in all directions. Everyone threw their hands in front of their eyes. Shadows went spidering out in all directions from that disc. And he took a step forward, and then another. "Bhisma must die," he said. And Bhisma, for his part, drove his chariot right up there to Krishna. And he leapt from the chariot. He threw down his bow and his arrows, and he said, Yes, yes, Krishna, it would be an honor to be slain by you. You who uphold the three worlds. Yes, kill me now. Tell me, have I paid for my theft? So long ago have I paid for my theft. And Krishna took a step forward, and then another, and thunder cracked, and the sky was filled with black clouds. And suddenly Arjuna tackled Krishna from behind. "Gah! No," he said, "no, do not make your words a lie. You have vowed not to take part in this battle. Do not make your words a lie. You, of all of us, must uphold Dharma, the way, the harmony of this world." And Krishna said, "I do not care. I will kill Bhisma." And he took another step forward, and then another. And then Arjuna said, "Krishna, no, I swear, I will kill this man, the grandfather of us all, the teacher whom I love. I swear I will kill him tomorrow. I have sworn it, and I will do it." And Krishna heard these words, and he breathed out, and the black clouds in the sky turned gray. And he breathed out a second time, and the gray clouds turned white. And he breathed out a third time, and the razor-sharp disc vanished from his hand, and the clouds blew away. And with great effort he took a step towards the chariot, and then another. And then he got onto that chariot, he took up the reins, and Arjuna climbed in after him. And Krishna wheeled that chariot around and away from Bhisma. The sun was almost down, almost at the horizon. The day's battle would almost be over. Bhisma took up his bow and his arrows. He got back into his chariot. He called down an astra of fire, and fire came out of the sky, twisting down. It descended upon an entire battalion of the Pandavas' armies, and they were incinerated all at once, their gasps and screams going up into the air. They became ash, blown away in the wind. And then the sun reached the horizon, and the day was over. Back in the great tent at the center of their armies, Arjuna, Bhima, Yudhishthira, Nakula, Sahadeva, and Krishna all conferred. And Yudhishthira said, "Krishna, you have told us that victory is inevitable for us. Yet, while Bhisma lives, this victory seems impossible. How are we to kill this man? How are we to stop the way he is demolishing our armies?" And Krishna said, "Perhaps you should ask him." And so, in the twilight, Yudhishthira and Arjuna, the two brothers, walked through the twilight away from their armies and across the battlefield strewn with broken chariots, dying men and horses, the battlefield strewn with broken weapons. Unarmed, they walked straight into the camp of the Kurus, and they walked and they came to the white tent of Bhisma. They entered that tent, and they knelt down at his feet. They touched his feet and put their foreheads to the ground before him. And Yudhishthira said, "Bhisma, greetings. I come to you in distress. O grandfather of us all, O great teacher. You have said that victory for us is inevitable. Yet, while you live, it seems that victory is impossible. Bhisma, school us. Tell me, how may you be killed? And Bhisma said, Yudhishthira, the words you have spoken are true. Victory for you is assured. Yet, so long as I have a weapon in my hand, I am invincible. For you know, long ago I was given the power to choose the moment of my death. However, remember, I will always honor the rules of war. I will always honor Dharma. The rules of war, said Yudhishthira. Yes, said Bhisma. You remember? I will not take up my weapons against a man who has thrown his own weapons down. I will not attack a man running away. I will not attack an unarmed man. I will not fight at night. I will not strike a child, and I would not strike a woman. But, said Yudhishthira, there are no women on this battlefield. That is what you believe, said Bhisma. But there is a soldier in your army, a soldier by the name of Shikhandi. And though she has presented herself as a man, she is a woman. Why has she chosen to fight in this battle, said Yudhishthira. She is there because of great anger and great hatred of me. What is the cause of this hatred, said Yudhishthira. That is her secret, said Bhisma, and it is mine. But if you place Shikhandi before me, I will not strike her. Not with an arrow, not with a sword. This is what I have to say to you. Yudhishthira and Arjuna looked at him, and then they bowed down before him once more. Thank you, Bhisma. Thank you, Yudhishthira said. And the two of them turned and walked out of the white tent and through the camp of the Kurus. Night had fallen. Fires were burning. Soldiers were warming themselves around those fires, telling stories. Above them, the stars shone in the sky. They left the camp of the Kurus and walked across the battlefield, where so many had died. And as the stars shone down, they stopped in the middle of that battlefield, and Yudhishthira and Arjuna wept. The next day the sun rose, and all the warriors climbed out of sleep, climbed out of the soft rest of sleep, where dreams had come, dreams like threads woven into the tapestry of consciousness. So the soldiers awoke and gathered around fires and sharpened their weapons and prepared for the day's battle. And as Arjuna was preparing his chariot, as he was preparing his bow and his arrows, Krishna came up to him and said, Arjuna, I will not drive your chariot today. Instead, you must take this man, Shikhandi. Arjuna turned and looked at Shikhandi. A man with long hair, a man with a lovely face. And Arjuna simply said, As you wish, Krishna. Shikhandi, let us ride into glory together. And on this day, Bhisma arranged his armies in the formation of a great hawk. And Arjuna arranged his armies in the shape of the crescent moon. And as conch shells sounded in the air, as the warriors roared and shouted and yelled, the two armies came together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And there was shouting and crying out, and the spears and the arrows flew through the air. And throughout the day, Bhishma and Arjuna circled each other, each of them bearing down upon the other, each of them failing to kill the other. And they called astras down out of the air, astras of fire and ice and stone and poisonous snakes that went writhing, twisting through the air. But always each of these spells was counteracted by the other. So it went all day long, the two armies like great seething oceans, foaming and crashing and hurling themselves at each other. Finally, late in the day, when the sun was near the edge of the sky, Arjuna came closer and closer to Bhishma, and he took a razor-sharp arrow from his quiver, and he let it loose, and it struck the bowstring of Bhishma and snapped it in two. And in a flash, Bhishma restrung his bow and reached down for an arrow. But in this moment, Arjuna sighted over the shoulder of Shikhandi into the hole in the air where no weapon was, and he let his arrow go. Time seemed to stop. The arrow frozen in the air. Around it, the horses, the chariots, the elephants, the yelling, the screaming warriors. It was as though you could spend forever walking between the soldiers on that battlefield, seeing the staring eyes, the rearing horses, testing the sharpness of every sword and spear. But time the destroyer could not be stopped. And like a river hurtling towards the sea, all things began to move again. The horses, the spears, and the arrow that Arjuna had loosed plunged into the chest of Bhishma, and he groaned, "Gah! I have been struck!" And he staggered to the side, and his chariot stopped. And he stepped down from the chariot, and there was the arrow deep in his chest. And he said, "Arjuna has struck me. Shikhandi, Amba, do you hear? It was Arjuna's arrow which has struck me, not one of yours." "What have I done?" said Shikhandi. "What have I done? Who am I? Who is this old man?" And Bhishma took another step forward, and then another. And all the soldiers on the battlefield stopped fighting and lay down their weapons. Silently they came towards Bhishma. And Bhishma said, "Arjuna, I am tired. Give me a bed on which I can rest my weary bones." And Arjuna fired 50 arrows into the sky, and they came down, weaving themselves together into the shape of a bed in the ground, their points embedded in the ground, their feathered ends pointing up. And Bhishma turned and with a great groan fell onto that bed of arrows. Gah! And then he said, "Arjuna, I am thirsty. Bring me water." "Yes," said Arjuna. And he fired an arrow up into the sky, and it turned around and fell back to earth and embedded itself deep in the ground and found a hidden spring connected to the Ganges itself. And water went burbling, flourishing up out of the earth. And Bhishma reached out his hand, cupped some of that water in his hand, and drank that sweet, clear water of the sacred Ganges, the river which was his mother. And sorrowfully everyone came forward, in shock. Bhishma had been struck with an arrow, the grandfather of everyone. And Duryodhana came running, came through the soldiers, and he came to Bhishma's side, and he knelt down beside him, and he said, "Bhishma, we have healers, men trained in the knowledge of plants and the power of medicines, men able to draw weapons out of the body. Come, let them do their work. Your story is not over yet." "Duryodhana," said Bhishma, "tell your healers that I praise them, that I honor their work and their knowledge, and then send them away. I will die in 58 days, just after the winter solstice." "But Duryodhana, please, stop fighting over land. Give up this struggle which has led to so much suffering. Make peace with your cousins. Let there be harmony in this land." Duryodhana stood up. "Bhishma, I will not, for I am a king, and I will defend what is mine." And he turned and walked away into the crowd. And weeping, one soldier after another bowed down before Bhisma, aghast, in shock. Finally, as the sun went down and darkness covered the world, they turned and went back to their camps. So Bhisma lay there on his bed of arrows on the battlefield, and slowly the moon rose and shone down. And late in the night, lit by that moonlight, a single man came walking across the battlefield, his face shrouded by a cloak. He came walking straight to Bhisma, and he stood beside him there on his bed of arrows. Bhisma looked at him. The man's face could not be seen. "Who are you?" he said. "Who are you who comes to me like a shadow, like a secret that does not want to be spoken aloud? Who are you who comes to me in the night?" And the man said, "Someone you have always hated, someone you have always despised." And the man took the cloak away from his face, and Bhisma saw that it was Karna. "Karna," said Bhisma, "I do not hate you. I do not despise you. We have had our differences, yes, but you are strong, you are beautiful, your gifts are real, but you are following a blind man. Speak to Duryodhana. Tell him to make peace with his cousins, end this horrible conflict." And Karna said, "No. Duryodhana took me up when everyone else cast me down. He has been a true friend to me. I will honor that friendship. I will follow him, even if it means my death. But now, Bhisma, now that you have fallen, I must ask for your blessing and your permission to fight." "Ah, Karna," said Bhisma, "if this is what you wish, yes, I give you my blessing. Yes, I give you my permission to fight. Follow the Dharma within you. Do what you think is right. I honor your strength. I honor your beauty. I give you my blessing." And in the moonlight, Karna bent his head down onto Bhishma's chest, and he wept. And eventually, on his bed of arrows, Bhisma slept. But deep in the night he was awoken by a sound. He was awoken by the fluttering of wings. And he opened his eyes. It seemed he was in a dream. There were swans gathered all around him. Swans with their white wings in the moonlight. Their wings whispering, making the sound of old chants and spells and secrets told over and over again by the Brahmins since the beginning of time. And again he drifted off. He awoke one more time, later in the night, to see all of those swans flying away. Jai Jai Ma, Jai Jai Ma, Jai Jai Ma, Jai Jai Ma. Kali Durga, Kali Durga, Jai Jai Ma, Kali And thank you for listening to this story. Thank you for attending to this story. I invite you to put some breath into your hands and offer it up to this story. This story which has its source in India. India of long ago, but India right now as well. This is a story very much alive, told, living in that culture today. I invite you to give a gift to the source of this story, the sources of this story, unknown as they are, unknown rivers below our feet. And as always, I invite you to go into this little story wherever you feel it is best to go. What image calls to you in this landscape? This troubled landscape. We're in the war. Yeah, I'm feeling the war thing. Who wants to be in a war? What a drag. Well, but we are. We want peace, harmony, laughter, love, all those good things. But we find ourselves in struggle. And what does this story have to say about that? Well, it speaks a lot of cause and effect, it seems to me. Things happen, but they happen as the result of prior things which happened. And I'm drawn to Krishna on the chariot, throwing down the reins and losing it. I love that moment. It's great. Krishna, if as you may remember, is God. Well, he's Vishnu, the God, the preserver of all things, who has come down to earth, incarnated as a man to keep the universe in balance. Again, broadly speaking, the cosmology of this story and of this culture has these three primary gods: Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Brahma, the creator; Vishnu, the preserver; Shiva, the destroyer. And already there's 10 stories bubbling up in my head about each of these fellas, these beings, these powers. But Vishnu's the preserver. He's the one who comes down to make sure life is maintained. He preserves things. And so he comes down to earth and he becomes this human king. And he is Arjuna's charioteer. And if you remember, in a previous part of the story, he vowed not to take part in the battle. That was the choice. Duryodhana and Duryodhana and Arjuna both got a choice of whether they wanted Krishna or all his warriors. And Arjuna chooses Krishna to be on his side. But Krishna swears not to take part in the battle in any way, not to raise a weapon against any opponent. But here, in this part of the story, he loses it. It's so great. It's very cool. He gets angry. I've lost it. Have you lost it? We lose it. We get angry. And we're like, forget the long term. Nothing matters but right now. What I am feeling. I am angry. I'm going to end this right now. It's such a human moment in a God. There's anger in the Old Testament, of course. God is frequently angry, bringing down plagues, locusts, etc., fire from the sky to punish humans for doing bad things. But this seems to be a different sort of anger to me here in the Mahabharata. Krishna is not, it is divine anger because he is divine, but it's not divine anger as we understand it. It's not retribution against humans for being bad. He's going against his own word. God has made this vow not to take part. And Krishna is like, screw it. This has to end. I'm sick of this. Let's kill this guy. It's so great. He loses it. But then Arjuna, reminds him. He says, look, you made this vow. You can't break your vow. You of all people, of all beings, can't do this. And Krishna manages it. He breathes out 3 times. Anger management among the divine beings. Anger management among us, who are the shadows of those divine beings. Us who walk around with road rage. I remember once in Brooklyn driving, I stuck in a traffic jam or something, or I was lost. I don't know what it is. It's just a small moment, but I left the traffic jam by taking a U-turn, but I could see that the fender of my car was not going to clear the curb. And I did it anyway. I knew it was going to hit the curb. And I was just like, screw it. I'm getting out of here. I'm leaving. I was pissed, And so I just did this little U-turn and I put a dent in the car. And, it wasn't a huge dent. It wasn't forever. It wasn't a huge, terrible thing. But it was in my car from then on. And That's an example which comes to mind for me right now, is just not paying attention to consequences. Right, the most important thing which matters right now is my anger, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to chuck this whatever thing off the back porch. I'm going to smash this. I'm going to yell, whatever it is, And perhaps you know that, dear listener. Don't we all know that? So Krishna has this anger, and he's going to let it loose, but then he masters it. Then he is no longer swept away on its river. He's seething with anger, but he breathes out and the clouds turn gray. He breathes out and the gray clouds turn white, and he breathes out and the white clouds blow away. And the birds begin to sing, perhaps. And he gets back in his chariot, and off they go. So anyway, I just love that moment. It's a wonderful comment on things. I don't know what it means. Does it need to mean anything? The gods, too, can lose it. And you could say, I suppose, that this is all a plan on Krishna's part to inspire Arjuna to really do what needs to be done and to kill Bhisma, who is his teacher and his mentor in many ways. But I don't know. I suppose that's an interpretation. I don't like it as much. I like it better that Krishna just loses it, because he is incarnated as a human after all, though he is divine. And though in the Bhagavad Gita earlier in the story we saw him in his immense divine manifestation as much as he can possibly be seen by us, he is also human. And I guess that's perhaps the part which is speaking now. Who knows? I don't have a long essay on this moment, but it's just very cool. And then we get Bhishma's death. His death brought about in a way, by Shikhandi, who is Amba reincarnated as a man. Well, as a woman. I mean, a woman, actually the gender of Shikhandi is extremely complicated, and I've simplified it here. You can look at the original. You can track it down. It involves gender switching, genital switching, all kinds of stuff, monsters in the forest. It's very complicated, but basically, the way I'm telling it here, and the way it has been told by some, is Shikhandi was Amba, right? Amba, the woman who was spurned by Bhishma long ago, and vowed to kill him, though he could not be killed, though he had the power to choose the moment of his own death. She's like, I'm going to beat that. I'm going to kill you. She went to go learn the arts of being a warrior, all these manly things, and many people refused. So eventually she built a fire, threw herself on it, because she'd prayed to Shiva and heard that in her next life she would then get what she desired. So she comes back, and she is Shikhandi, a woman in disguise as a man in this part of the story, who is instrumental in killing Bhishma. Although, as Bhishma himself points out, she doesn't shoot an arrow at Bhishma. She's just sort of a human shield for Arjuna to do the work. So, again, remarkable. Why do I say remarkable? Well, I just love the reach of this story. How long ago are these events? A long time ago. I mean, in my version here, we're 12 episodes in. In the written version, it's hundreds of pages have passed in this story. It's a big story. To embrace this story, I feel like I want to stretch my hands out to either side, It's not like a load we are carrying, you and I, those of us listening, but it's wide. It's like a great wheel or something like that. Because we have these events early on, Bhishma spurns Amba, who he has won in a tournament. Yes, I know, strange, but that's the way it is. And so she rejects him. But yeah, maybe I should mention that. I don't know, just the whole gender thing, right? She is treated as property. She is one of 3 princesses won in a contest by Bhishma at the beginning of this epic, in order to find a wife for the king at the time. And Amba's like, well, I love this other guy, so please release me. Bhishma does so, and then the King Salva, rejects her, saying, well, you were won by Bhishma. He's big, scary warrior man. I can't be near you because he's going to be angry at me. So she's rejected by both and then goes off into the world. So on one way of thinking, yeah, women as property, totally oppressive, totally horrible. But nevertheless, she becomes this picture of like ultimate strength, right? She's so determined. She's like, I'm gonna kill you, you bastard. So she goes around trying to learn the arts of death, from warriors and soldiers. Nobody will teach her, but still she is not stopped. So she kills herself after praying to Shiva, becomes reincarnated, and eventually brings about Bhishma's death. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is that if we're looking at this in terms of action and passivity, if we're looking at this in terms of strength and weakness, yes, we can cry out over this weirdness of Bhishma, winning princesses in a contest. But the women in this story are super active, super badass, really, if I can use that phrase. So Amba accomplishes what she wants with relentless ferocity and determination, even past her own life, which we saw in Draupadi as well, right? She had determination to get what she wanted in her past life, which then manifests in her life now, which touches on this larger issue of cause and effect. And cause and effect in the mythic world of this story, in the actual world of India, as I understand it, having never been there, being not a Hindu by any stretch, cause and effect take place not just right now. It's not like you let go of a stone and it falls to the ground. Sure, that's cause and effect. But cause and effect also happens over lifetimes. And it happens in thought as well. Your thoughts are actions, and they determine the future, as well as your physical actions, perhaps more so. So that is what pushes cause and effect, which we in the West share. We're aware of that, right? Cause and effect. You do this, you go outside and on a winter day and you get cold. You set fire to a log and it burns. That's cause and effect. But cause and effect here is of a much bigger variety because it passes through many lives, and it encompasses thought as well, and perhaps things deeper than thought. And so we get karma, Karma, which is simply cause and effect, but over a long, long time. So who we are now is determined by who we were and what we did in our past lives. So we see this in many ways in this story. And this battle, which is just, relentless, bloody battle. Like, who wants that? Who likes that? But what I get out of it is the way in which the destinies of these characters were settled long before. And the story laid that down. So the size of this story is not simply just let's stuff everything in here. I mean, at times it is. But for the most part, it is making a point that our actions, which include our thoughts, have effects over many generations, over thousands of years, we could say, over a long, long time. And that is a heavy thing to contemplate. It's a beautiful thing to contemplate. Our actions, our thoughts, our beliefs, all of these things affect the future in ways we cannot be aware of. So that could be an uplifting thing, perhaps. It could be a depressing thing, perhaps. Depends where you are. It's neither here nor there. It's simply the wind blowing, and this is the way it blows. All right, then. And I'll just mention the sad figure of Karna coming to Bhishma. If you remember, they argued, and Karna vowed not to fight until Bhishma had fallen in the battle. And the swans who are reincarnated Brahmins, so the story says, and they come to visit Bhishma in the night. Beautiful. I hope the story speaks to you. I hope you are able to let it speak to you. And I hope the same for myself. Thank you for joining me. Thanks to all those who support this podcast, the Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join them, please do so. That's what keeps this wheel rolling through the world. That's what keeps this voice on the air. And thank you for listening to this story. I give you the poem of the breath that is the wind flowing over the mountains, flowing over the seas. I give you the boat on the water, its sails filled with that wind. The boat made of trees rooted in the ground, trees going on a long voyage across the sea. I give you this poem of the waves, rising and falling, eternal in their sleep, in their wakefulness. The eternal ocean, deep, deep beyond all possibility of us to imagine. Thank you for joining me, and take care.